Okay, so you know those little devices everyone's wearing these days to track their heart rate and steps and all that?
Uh-huh.
Well, those are becoming kind of a big deal in healthcare too, especially when they can track blood oxygen levels.
Right, right. Yeah, pulse oximeters.
Yeah, exactly. So this market report we got, it's all about wearable pulse oximeters, and honestly, just the numbers alone really jumped out at us. We're talking about a global market that's expected to hit 315.6 million USD in 2025. Like, that's huge.
It is, yeah. And the thing is, it's not even just about where it is now, it's where it's going.
Yeah.
From 2025 to 2033, they're projecting a CGR of 8%.
8% every year.
Every year, yeah. So by 2033, we could be looking at a market worth over 671 million USD. That's more than double.
Wow, that's a serious jump. What's driving that kind of growth?
Well, a few things.
Hmm.
The report really highlights the rising number of people dealing with chronic diseases. Like think COPD heart failure conditions, where knowing your blood oxygen level is really important.
Makes sense. I mean, if you need to keep a close eye on that, a wearable device is way more convenient than, constantly going to the doctor or using those finger clip things.
Exactly. And on top of that, the technology is getting so much better and smaller and easier to integrate into our lives.
Hmm.
It's not like the old days with bulky equipment.
Right. And speaking of smaller, the report talks about different types of wearable pulse oximeters. It's not just the wristbands anymore.
Yeah, you've got wrist-worn ones, which are probably going to stay the most popular for a while just because people are used to wearing things on their wrists.
Plus, like you said, the tech in those is getting really
Oh,
advanced.
yeah, but the ones that are really taking off in terms of growth are the ring pulse oximeters.
Hmm.
Those are fascinating.
I know. I've seen ads for them. I'm kind of curious about them. What do you think is driving that?
I think it's the discreetness of it.
Hmm.
A ring is already something a lot of people wear every day.
Hmm.
So if you can have it track your heart rate and blood oxygen without anyone even noticing, I think that's a huge appeal for people who are really into health and fitness.
Or maybe if you have a condition where you need to be monitoring that stuff all the time.
Right, exactly. Continuous data without having to wear a big clunky device,
Hmm.
that's the future.
And the report mentions foot pulse oximeters too. I don't know much about those.
Yeah, those are definitely more specialized. I think they're mainly used in hospitals or for people with specific conditions that affect circulation in their feet.
So not something most people would need.
Probably not. The report focuses more on the wrist and ring ones.
Okay, makes sense. Another interesting breakdown was by age group. It seems like the pediatric market is actually bigger right now than the adult one.
It is, yeah. Which makes sense when you think about it. You've got premature babies, kids with asthma, all sorts of situations where constant monitoring of blood oxygen is crucial.
And I guess with kids, you really need those devices to be comfortable and easy to use.
Yeah, there have been some big advancements in designing kid-friendly pulse oximeters, which has helped that market grow.
But the report says the adult market is growing really fast too.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's all tied to those trends we talked about earlier. More and more adults are developing chronic conditions. Plus, there's a huge emphasis on personal health and wellness these days. So people want to track their metrics even if they're not sick.
It's like having a little health checkup on your wrist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's only going to become more common as the technology gets more sophisticated.
All right, so we've got all these devices being made and sold, but how are they actually getting to the consumers?
Good question. So the report breaks it down into three main distribution channels.
Mm.
You've got e-commerce, traditional retail, and direct sales.
Direct sales being like through doctors and hospitals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's actually the biggest segment right now because with medical devices, a lot of people want that personal interaction and explanation.
Especially if it's something you're going to be relying on for your health.
Right. But e-commerce is growing like crazy.
I can see why. The convenience of buying online, having it shipped right to your door.
Yeah, and with so many options available online, people can really shop around, compare prices, find the perfect device for them. It's a game changer.
It is. So, okay, we've got a good handle on the overall market, the different types of devices, who's using them, how they're being sold. Now let's zoom in on specific regions because this report gets pretty granular.
Right.
It seems like North America is the big dog right now in terms of market size.
It is, yeah. They're projected to have over 40% of the global market share in 2025, which is a market size of about 145 million USD.
Wow. And why is North America so far ahead?
Well, the report points to a few things. They've got a really strong research and development scene, a lot of innovation happening there. Plus, governments in North America are pretty supportive of healthcare technology, and people generally have higher disposable incomes so they can afford these devices.
Makes sense. And North America isn't just one big blob. The report breaks it down further, right?
It does. They look at the U.S., Canada, and Mexico separately.
And are there any interesting differences between those three?
Yeah, for sure. The U.S. is obviously the biggest player. They're projected to hit 114 million USD in 2025 with a CGR of about 6%. Canada is interesting. Their market is smaller, only around 17 million USD, but they've got a slightly higher growth rate, closer to 7%.
Why is that?
It's partly because Canada has an aging population, and as people get older, they tend to need more healthcare and monitoring, so that's driving some of the demand.
Makes sense. What about Mexico?
Mexico is also growing steadily. They're projected to reach about 13 million USD in 2025 with an EGR of around 6.7%.
Okay, so North America is leading the pack, but what about Europe?
Europe's a major player too. They're holding steady at over 30% of the global market share.
So still a huge chunk.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Their market size in 2025 is projected to be about 108 million USD with a CGR of 6.5%.
And what's fueling that growth in Europe?
Similar factors to North America, really.
Mm-hmm.
An aging population, a big focus on preventative health care, and a lot of government support for things like remote patient monitoring.
Right, so they're embracing the technology.
They are. And the report dives into individual countries, too. It's interesting to see the variations.
Yeah, what are some of the standouts?
Well, the UK is one to watch. Their market is projected to hit 18 million USD with a CAGR of 7.3%. Again, that aging population is a big factor.
Okay. And what about the biggest market in Europe?
That would be Germany. They're projected to reach 21 million USD with a CAGR of 6.7%.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of big medical device companies there, and they're seeing a lot of people moving into urban areas, which tends to drive healthcare innovation.
Interesting. And France?
France is a bit smaller than Germany and the UK. Their market is projected to be around 10 million USD with a CAGR of 5.7%.
All right. And any other notable players in Europe?
Russia's worth mentioning. They're projected to hit 16 million USD with a CAGR of 5.5%.
Yeah.
And then you've got Spain at almost 9 million USD with a similar growth rate. It's fascinating to see how even smaller countries are getting in on this. Some of the fastest growth rates are actually in places like Luxembourg and Greece, which is really interesting.
That is interesting. I guess it shows that this technology is becoming more accessible and appealing all over the world.
Exactly. It's not just a North American or Western European phenomenon anymore.
All right, so we've talked about North America, we've talked about Europe. Now, what about the region that's really exploding in terms of growth?
Asia Pacific.
Asia Pacific, they're the ones to watch.
Definitely. Right now, they're sitting at around 23% of the global market share. That's about 83 million USD in 2025. But their projected CAGR is a whopping 10%.
10%. That's almost double the growth rate of North America.
It is. It's incredible. What's happening there is really remarkable.
So what's driving that explosive growth?
It's a perfect storm of factors. They've got the aging population, the rising rates of chronic diseases, just like other regions. But on top of that, you've got huge improvements in access to healthcare technology, rapidly developing economies, and a massive population that's becoming increasingly tech-savvy. Plus, e-commerce is booming in Asia Pacific, which makes it easier for people to buy these devices.
It all adds up. So which countries in Asia Pacific are leading the charge?
China is the biggest market in the region. They're projected to reach 35 million USD in 2025 with a CAGR of 9.5%. Their rising disposable income is a big factor there. And then there's India. Their market is smaller, only about 10 million USD, but their CAGR is an incredible 11.8%.
Wow, almost 12% growth every year. That's amazing.
It is. It shows you the potential of these developing markets when it comes to healthcare technology. And it's not just China and India. Japan, South Korea, Australia, Southeast Asia, they're all experiencing significant growth. It's a really dynamic region.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the big players, North America, Europe, Asia Pacific. What about Latin America?
Latin America is a smaller market, but they're still seeing some impressive growth. They're projected to hold just over 5% of the global market share in 2025. That's about 18 million USD with a CAGR of 7.4%.
Not too shabby. And what's driving that growth?
Similar trends to other regions, increasing rates of chronic diseases, a growing middle class with more disposable income, and better access to healthcare. And e-commerce is also playing a big role there, making these devices more accessible.
So which countries in Latin America are standing out?
Brazil's the biggest player. They're projected to reach almost 8 million USD with a CAGR of 8%. They're putting a lot of money into improving their healthcare system, which is helping. But you've also got Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile. They're all showing strong growth. It's a region with a lot of potential.
It sounds like it. Okay, and last but not least, the Middle East and Africa.
Right now, they're the smallest market, only about 2% of the global share. That's about 7 million USD in 2025. but they're projected to grow at a decent rate with a CAGR of 7.7%.
So they're not being left behind.
Not at all. They're seeing a lot of investment in healthcare technology,
Yeah.
and there's some interesting strategic partnerships happening there to boost adoption. Well, the GCC countries, those are the ones in the Persian Gulf region. They're the biggest market in the Middle East and Africa right now. They're projected to hit about $3 million USD with a TGR of 8.5%. And a lot of that growth is being driven by strategic alliances between different countries and companies.
So they're working together to make it happen.
Exactly. And South Africa is another one to watch. They're projected to reach over $1 million USD with a CGR of 8.7%. And then you got Egypt, and Nigeria, Turkey. They're all seeing steady growth.
Okay, so we've covered the whole world. It's amazing to see how this technology is taking off globally. But let's zoom back in on some of those key market segments we talked about earlier. Like, why are wrist pulse oximeters expected to stay dominant?
I think it comes down to familiarity and comfort. People are used to wearing watches, fitness trackers, things like that on their wrists. So putting a pulse oximeter there just feels natural. Plus, the technology is getting so advanced. Those little wristbands can do so much more than they used to.
It's true. I remember when those first fitness trackers came out, they could barely count steps. Now they're practically mini computers on your wrist.
Right, exactly. And that's only going to continue. As sensors get smaller and more accurate, as battery life improves, as they integrate more seamlessly with our smartphones, those wrist-worn devices are only going to become more appealing.
Okay, what about ring pulse oximeters? Why are they projected to grow so fast?
I think it's the perfect combination of form and function. They're discreet, they're comfortable to wear, and they can provide continuous monitoring without getting in the way. It's like having your health data right at your fingertips, literally. And for people who are really into tracking their health metrics or who need constant monitoring due to a medical condition, that's a game changer.
I can see that. And what about the age groups? We talked about how pediatrics is the bigger market now, but adults are catching up.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see that shift happening. The pediatric market is strong because there's such a need for monitoring babies and kids, especially those with respiratory problems. But as awareness of these devices grows, and as more adults develop chronic conditions, that market is going to keep expanding.
Makes sense. It's all about taking a more proactive approach to health.
Exactly. People want to be in control of their health data.
Yeah.
They want to know what's going on with their bodies, and they want to be able to share that information with their doctors.
And these devices empower them to do that.
They do. And lastly, let's not forget about how these devices are being sold. Direct sales are still the biggest channel, but e-commerce is the rising star. It makes sense that direct sales are strong, especially for medical devices. People want to be able to talk to someone, ask questions, get personalized recommendations. But with e-commerce, you've got the convenience, the wider selection, the competitive pricing. It's just a more accessible way to shop for a lot of people.
Especially for younger generations who are used to buying everything online.
Exactly. So even though direct sales will probably always have a place in the market for these types of devices, e-commerce is going to continue to grow and shape the landscape.
Okay, so we've talked about the what, the where, the who. Now let's talk about the why. What are the big forces driving this market forward?
Well, the report highlights a few key things. First and foremost, the rising incidence of chronic diseases worldwide. This is a huge factor because as more people develop conditions like COPD, heart failure, diabetes, they need ways to monitor their health, and wearable pulse oximeters are a perfect solution.
It's like having a doctor on your wrist.
Exactly. And second, you've got the growing awareness of personal health and wellness. People are more educated about their health than ever before, and they're more proactive about taking care of themselves. So they're looking for tools and technologies that can help them do that.
And these devices definitely fit the bill.
They do. And then third, you've got the global aging population. As people get older, they're more likely to develop health problems. So the demand for devices that can help them monitor their health and stay independent is only going to increase.
It's like a triple whammy, all these trends converging to create this huge demand.
Exactly. It's a perfect storm for the wearable pulse oximeter market.
Okay, so it's all sunshine and roses then.
Well, not quite. The report does mention some challenges. One of the big ones is cost. Especially in developing countries, these devices can be expensive, which can limit adoption.
That's a good point. And what about other challenges or potential roadblocks?
Data privacy is a concern for some people. These devices are collecting a lot of personal health information, so it's important to make sure that data is being handled securely and responsibly.
Right, and what about regulations? Are there any hurdles there?
Yeah, there are a lot of regulations around medical devices in general, and wearable pulse oximeters are no exception. So companies have to navigate those regulations, which can be time-consuming and expensive.
Okay, so some challenges to keep in mind. But overall, it seems like the future is pretty bright for this market.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a market that's ripe for innovation. There's so much potential for growth and development, and we're already seeing some exciting trends emerging. Well, one of the big ones is the integration of wearable pulse oximeters with other health and fitness tracking technologies. It's not just about blood oxygen anymore. It's about creating a holistic picture of your health, using data from multiple sources.
So like combining data from your pulse oximeter with your sleep tracker, your fitness tracker, your diet app, all in one place.
Exactly. That's the future of personalized healthcare.
I like it. And what about advancements in the technology itself?
Oh, there are tons of things happening on that. Both sensors are getting more accurate, battery life is improving, and the devices themselves are becoming more user-friendly and stylish. Plus, we're seeing a lot of innovation in how the data is being used.
Mm-hmm.
For example, some companies are developing algorithms that can use pulse oximeter data to predict health problems before they even happen.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's not just about monitoring anymore, it's about prediction and prevention.
Exactly. It's about taking healthcare to the next level.
And all of this is happening in a really competitive market. The report mentions a lot of different companies. What are they doing to stand out?
Well, you're seeing a lot of focus on technological innovation. Companies are constantly trying to develop new and better sensors, make their devices more accurate and reliable, and add new features that will appeal to consumers.
It's like a tech arms race.
In a way, it is.
Yeah.
But it's good for consumers because it means they have more choices and better products to choose from. And then on top of technological innovation, you're seeing companies collaborating with each other with fitness platforms, with healthcare providers. It's all about expanding their reach and creating a more integrated healthcare ecosystem.
Right. So it's not just about selling devices, it's about creating a whole ecosystem around those devices.
Exactly. It's about providing a complete solution for people who are trying to manage their health.
And the report highlighted some recent collaborations that really caught our eye, like the one between Google and Massimo.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah.
In January of last year, 2025, they announced a partnership to create a reference platform for Wear OS smartwatches using Massimo's biosensing technologies.
Which basically means
It means that we could be seeing a lot more smartwatches with built-in pulse oximeters that are accurate and reliable. And that's huge because it makes this technology even more accessible to the average person.
totally. And there was another interesting partnership between Tanovi and Non in medical.
Right. That one was announced in November of 2024, and it's all about using remote patient monitoring to improve health equity. It's a really important initiative because it aims to make sure that everyone has access to quality health care, regardless of where they live or their socioeconomic status.
That's fantastic. And then Non in medical was also involved in a collaboration with Medicine.
Yeah, that one was announced in May of 2024, and it's focused on streamlining the flow of data from non-INS devices to healthcare providers. Basically, they're making it easier for doctors to remotely monitor their patients who are using these devices.
Which is huge for people with chronic conditions.
It is. It means they don't have to go to the doctor's office as often. They can get the care they need from the comfort of their own homes.
So all these collaborations are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with wearable pulse oximeters.
They are. It's an exciting time to be following this market.
It really is. So let's wrap this up. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the world of wearable pulse oximeters?
Well, the biggest one is that this is a global market that's experiencing explosive growth, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. It's being driven by some powerful forces like the rising incidence of chronic diseases, the growing focus on personal health, and the aging population.
And we're seeing those trends play out all over the world with different regions experiencing different levels of growth, but all moving in the same direction.
Exactly. And within the market, we're seeing a lot of segmentation by product type, age group, distribution channel, each with its own unique dynamics. But the overall trend is clear wearable. Pulse oximeters are becoming an increasingly important part of the healthcare landscape.
And the technology is constantly evolving, getting more accurate, more sophisticated, and more integrated into our lives.
And that evolution is being driven by a lot of factors, including intense competition between companies, which is a good thing for consumers because it's leading to better products and lower prices.
So it's a win-win for everyone involved.
Pretty much. And it's not just about monitoring health anymore. It's about prediction, prevention, personalized healthcare. It's about empowering people to take control of their own health.
It is. And that's what makes this market so fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. There are so many possibilities, and we're only just scratching the surface.
That's a great point. So for all of you listening out there, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. As these devices become more sophisticated and more integrated into our lives, how might they change the way we think about health and healthcare? What new possibilities might they unlock? And what new challenges might we need to address?
It's something to think about for sure.
It is. Thanks for diving deep with me today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
My pleasure.